Welcome back to Room 13A. If you love spine-chilling Appalachian horror stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale from the shadows. Now, let's dive into tonight's story. The fog rolled over the Appalachian hills like a living thing. Trees towered on either side, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. The fog rolled over the Appalachian hills like a living thing. Trees towered on either side, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Every step I took on the narrow forest trail seemed to echo louder than it should, as if something was listening. They had warned me about this place. Old-timers spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting toward the woods. They said some things shouldn't be disturbed. Legends of a woman in black, a shadow of vengeance, were whispered around campfires and barroom tables alike. I didn't believe in ghosts. I thought it was just stories. But as the sun sank behind the mountains, the shadows deepened, and doubt crept in like the cold creeping through my jacket. I reached a small, abandoned settlement. The cabins were crumbling, their windows like empty eyes staring back at me. The wind moaned through the broken shutters, carrying a sound that could have been a cry or a warning. I stopped and listened. The forest seemed to hold its breath. A sudden movement caught my eye, a figure in black, slipping behind a cluster of trees. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart hammered in my chest. There was no logical explanation, only the pulse of fear rising like a tide. The stories weren't just stories. Something had been waiting, something that knew I had arrived. As night fell, the forest came alive with strange noises. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. I tried to convince myself it was animals or wind, but the chill crawling up my spine told me otherwise. Someone or something was watching me. And then I heard it, the faintest step behind me. Slow, deliberate. I didn't dare turn around. I didn't want to see her. Yet part of me knew I would. The Appalachian woman in black had not come for stories. She had come for me. A scream pierced the distance, sharp, desperate, then silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. My instinct screamed to run, but my feet were rooted to the ground. Something was about to happen, and I was standing right in its path. The legend of the woman in black, the locals spoke of her in whispers, calling her the woman in black. Some said she appeared after a great betrayal. Others claimed she was wronged in life and now hunted the living to balance the scales. They described her as tall, cloaked in darkness, with eyes that seemed to pierce straight into your soul. No one had seen her face and lived to tell the tale, they said. I learned her story in fragments, told by an old man with hands gnarled like the roots of the forest. Decades ago, a woman named Eliza had lived in a cabin deep in the woods. She was said to be kind once, gentle, and full of life. But when greed and jealousy tore her family apart, they left her to die alone in that same forest I now walked. Some claimed they buried her in the dirt. Others whispered she simply vanished. And from that moment, she became something else, something vengeful. They said she didn't just haunt the living, she punished them. Anyone who strayed too far into her woods, anyone who disturbed her domain, would feel her gaze, hear her footsteps, and sometimes disappear. Children were warned not to wander alone, hunters to avoid certain trails. Even seasoned hikers felt her presence, a cold, suffocating dread that made their hair stand on end. I remembered the figure I'd glimpsed earlier. Was it her? Could this be the same shadow whispered about for generations? Rational thought tried to fight the fear, but it was weak against the weight of the stories and the growing darkness around me. Every gust of wind sounded like her sigh, every cracking branch a step closer. And then there were the signs. Black flowers blooming in impossible places, doors left open in abandoned cabins, strange scratches on trees that looked almost like runes. The old man warned that these were not random. They were markers, messages from her, a warning that she knew you were there. Something about the forest itself seemed complicit, like the trees leaned in to whisper secrets. And the more I learned, the more I realized the truth. The woman in black wasn't just a story to scare children. She was real. She was patient. And she was waiting. Strange encounters begin. The forest seemed alive now, every sound amplified. My own footsteps echoed unnaturally, and shadows shifted just beyond my sight. I kept thinking I saw her, just glimpses, a flash of black among the trees, but every time I turned, there was nothing. The air grew colder, sharper, biting at my skin, and an uneasy feeling settled deep in my chest. It started with small things. A twig snapping behind me when no one was there. Leaves rustling as though someone, or something, had brushed past. Then came the whispers, faint and unintelligible, carried on the wind. They sounded like my name, or perhaps a warning. My heart raced. Every instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity or foolishness kept me moving forward. I came upon a clearing where the moonlight barely reached, revealing the remnants of old cabins, long abandoned. The boards groaned as I stepped over them, and for a moment, I could swear I felt a gaze on my back. I spun around, nothing. Just the dark, silent trees. And then, the first unmistakable sign, a black cloak pinned on a branch as if left intentionally. It swayed gently, even though the air was still. My breath hitched. I knew it wasn't mine. I knew it wasn't anything natural. Something was marking my path, watching me, leading me. The forest seemed to close in around me. Each step was heavier than the last. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, some too quick, too deliberate to be tricks of the mind. Then came the laughter, low, almost melodic but cold, cutting through the night like a knife. It wasn't human, and yet it carried a message I couldn't ignore. She was near. A sudden movement in the trees made me freeze. There she was just beyond the clearing, a figure in black, tall and silent. The fog curled around her, hiding her features, but I felt the weight of her presence. My pulse thundered. My stomach dropped. She didn't move, but I knew she was aware of me, studying me. Calculating. Waiting. The cabin in the woods through the thick fog. I spotted it. A cabin, half hidden among the gnarled trees. Its roof sagged, windows shattered, and the door hung crooked on rusty hinges. It looked abandoned, yet something about it called to me, a pull I couldn't resist. The locals had mentioned a cabin tied to the woman in black, and now, standing before it, I realized this was no ordinary ruin. The air around it was colder, almost suffocating. My footsteps crunched over dead leaves as I approached, the sound unnervingly loud. Inside, the cabin reeked of damp wood and decay. Cobwebs clung to the corners like dark curtains, and the floorboards groaned under each step. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, twisting and writhing in the dim moonlight. I explored cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. In the center of the cabin was a fireplace, cold and filled with ash that looked disturbingly fresh. On the mantel, an old photograph caught my eye. A woman dressed in black, her face obscured by shadow, staring straight at the camera, or perhaps through it. My stomach churned. I had seen her before in glimpses, but now she was in my hands, in the real world. Suddenly, a loud crash came from behind me. I spun, heart racing, but the room was empty. The door slammed shut on its own, and the temperature plummeted. I could see my breath curling in the air, and a low hum seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. The shadows moved again, faster this time, like they were alive. A soft whisper reached my ears, so close I could feel it against my skin. "You shouldn't be here." It was the same voice I'd heard in the forest, but now it was tangible, real. I realized then that the cabin was not just a structure. It was a trap, a lure. A place where the woman in black could manifest her wrath fully. I wanted to flee, but my legs refused. My eyes were drawn to a doorway at the back of the cabin, a black void that seemed to pulse with some unnatural life. And in that doorway, I saw her again, a figure tall, black, silent. Watching, waiting. The tension in the room was suffocating, pressing down on me from every side. Face to face with the woman in black, I stepped closer to the back doorway, every nerve on fire. The darkness seemed to thicken, swallowing the faint light of my flashlight. And then she emerged, tall, silent, dressed in black from head to toe. Her presence was overwhelming, a cold so sharp it felt like it could pierce bone. I tried to speak, to demand who she was, but no words came. My voice was trapped in my throat, silenced by the weight of fear pressing down. She didn't move, didn't blink, but I could feel her eyes, or whatever lay behind that shrouded face, burning into me. Every instinct screamed to run, yet my feet remained rooted. Then came the whispers, louder now, swirling around me, a chorus of voices that were both hers and not hers. Leave or stay, doesn't matter. Each word echoed in my mind, unrelenting, chilling. I took another step, and she mirrored me, a shadow moving in perfect silence. It was impossible, unnatural, and I realized I was dealing with something beyond human comprehension. The cabin seemed to pulse with her presence, the walls closing in, the floor creaking beneath some invisible weight. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, loud, frantic, a countdown I couldn't stop. Then, without warning, she raised a hand, slow, deliberate. The air around me thickened, suffocating, and I felt an invisible force pushing me back. I stumbled, barely catching myself, and she advanced without making a sound. The whispers became screams in my mind, telling me the truth I hadn't wanted to admit. She wasn't just seeking vengeance on the lost or careless. She was here for me. Every story I'd heard, every warning whispered by the locals, had been a preparation for this moment. And then, a moment of horrifying clarity. Her face, shadowed and faceless, leaned closer, and I could see the emptiness where a soul should be. She was the forest, the darkness, the fog itself, alive, patient, eternal. And in that instant, I understood that escaping her wrath was no longer about running. It was about surviving her notice. The truth behind the vengeance, I stumbled backward, gasping for air, my mind racing to make sense of what I'd seen. The woman in black wasn't just a spirit or a ghost. She was a force born of rage and betrayal. And suddenly, the fragments of her story fell into place. Eliza, the woman they called the woman in black, had been wronged in ways unimaginable. Her family had abandoned her. Her community had shunned her. And in her final moments, she had been left to die alone in the unforgiving forest. The locals hadn't exaggerated. She wasn't seeking random victims. She sought justice, vengeance, a reckoning for the wrongs done to her. But in the decades since her death, her fury had grown, consuming the forest, twisting it, marking anyone who entered as part of her domain. Every whisper, every shadow, every black cloak was a warning, a message that she was still in control. I remembered the black flowers, the strange scratches on trees, the footprints that didn't belong to any human. They weren't coincidences. They were warnings, markers of her presence, and I had ignored them. Now, standing in the cabin, the reality hit me with full force. I was intruding on her world, and she hadn't noticed me. Her whispers swirled around me, more urgent now, almost pleading yet menacing. "Do you understand?" they seemed to say. "Do you see what happens when you trespass?" I could feel the forest closing in, pressing me into corners of my own fear. She wasn't just a legend. She was history, anger, and vengeance all wrapped into one unstoppable entity. The shadows in the cabin began to stretch, moving independently, as if the darkness itself were alive. I felt every story I had heard, the missing hikers, the vanished hunters, the whispers in the night, come alive in this single terrifying moment. She had been patient, watching for decades, waiting for someone to step too far into her world. And now, that someone was me. The truth wasn't just about her past. It was about the inevitable consequence of disturbing it. I realized there was no reasoning, no bargaining, no escaping the forest untouched. The woman in black's vengeance wasn't something that could be delayed. It was immediate, relentless, and merciless. Final encounter, lingering dread, the shadows thickened, curling around me like living tendrils. I could feel her presence everywhere. The walls, the floor, the air itself seemed saturated with her rage. She emerged from the darkness, closer than ever, silent yet terrifyingly deliberate. Every instinct screamed to run, but my body refused. It was as if the forest itself had claimed me, binding me to this moment. Her face, still obscured in the depths of black, tilted slightly. I could feel her studying me, measuring my fear, tasting my panic. The whispers returned, louder, a chorus of voices merging into one. "This is your reckoning." I realized I was not just witnessing vengeance. I was part of it. The forest, the cabin, and she herself were all instruments of a force far older than me, far stronger than me. I stumbled backward, searching for an escape, but the doorway I had come through now led only to darkness. The trees outside seemed alive, twisting unnaturally, blocking any path. The fog thickened, curling inside the cabin, and the temperature dropped to a bone-chilling cold. Every breath was visible, every movement sluggish. The woman in black advanced, silent, inevitable. Then a sudden gust slammed the cabin door shut behind me. The sound was deafening, and in that instant, I understood the terrifying truth. There was no way out. She could appear anywhere, at any time. The air vibrated with her wrath, and I realized the stories were not just legends. They were warnings. Warnings I had ignored. A fleeting glimpse of her face, shadowed, hollow, eternal, was the last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I was trapped in her world now, a world where the lines between life and legend no longer existed. And just as suddenly as it began, everything went silent. The forest returned to its deceptive calm. The fog hung thick between the trees, and the abandoned cabin stood still, as if nothing had happened. Yet the whispers lingered in the wind, carrying a message to anyone who dared to enter. She waits. She watches. She remembers. The Appalachian woman in black is more than a story. She is a warning, a shadow of vengeance that refuses to fade. If you ever find yourself in these woods, listen closely. Do not wander too far. And remember, some legends are very much alive. If you enjoyed this tale of terror, make sure to like, subscribe, and watch our next story. You never know which shadow might be waiting for you next.